I've had a lot of really great clients and I've been really grateful for them. But, how they show up it's not that clear to me exactly how that whole works.
Hey, Growth Techs, that is Graham Irwin, owner of Essential Habitat Architecture, a residential architecture firm in San Anselmo, California, with a focus on high-performance design. And hey there, I am Tyler Suomala, the creator of Growth Tech. Today, we're diving into a very common problem among firm owners. So Graham has been running his solo practice for more than 20 years and loves his clients, but his leads are inconsistent. So we dive into what levers he can pull to drive more awareness to his business, increase his lead flow, and make more potential clients aware of his firm. But before we begin, a huge thanks to Gelt for sponsoring Season 2. They've made managing my business and personal taxes stress-free, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check them out at joingelt.com. Plus, be sure to mention Growth Detect when you schedule a consultation to get 10% off your first year with Gelt. And if this is your first time listening to the Growth Tech podcast, here's the gist. There are somewhere around 30,000 architecture firm owners and leaders in the US today alone, but there's virtually no place for them to chat about the question that fuels their business. How do I find, attract, and win the best clients for my firm? So that's why I created this podcast, to tackle your real questions so you can walk away with actionable insights. And if you like the podcast, then you'll love The Studio, which is a private membership for architecture leaders with steps, strategies, and support to grow your business. And actually, everyone in Season 2 is a member, which you'll hear about at the end of the episode. If you want a taste of what's inside The Studio, then be sure to join my free newsletter at growthatect.com/join, where I share free sales and marketing growth hacks with more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. So go and join right now and enjoy the show. And what's the challenge that you'd love to address on the podcast today?
Just building a more consistent pipeline of referrals. I think, the whole thing's very chicken egg, but I feel like a lot of our onboarding process is pretty dialed in, but without a consistent stream of qualified leads or good, potentially qualified leads, it's hard to know and it doesn't do anything, right? It's just sitting there waiting for people to show up. And it's also, I think, the most nebulous thing to me, because the other pieces of this, are within our control and within our view, but what's going on out in the world is a bit more mysterious, a little harder to know and a little harder to have perspective on.
Yeah, it's also not something I feel like that we talk about that much, right? Because it's like even in the conversations that you have in school and the classes that you go to and the studios that you take, and then the conversations that you have like once you start working at firms and different things, there's somehow this like guise or assumption that like work just comes to you.
Right.
Right.
No, I mean, that's the common, I remember this forever, thinking like, oh, if I could just get that really good project, or if I could just get better photos on my website, or this or that, like somehow that will magically, the skies will open and everything will be, it hasn't been my experience, at least. I don't know. I've had a lot of really great clients and I've been really grateful for them. But, how they show up it's not that clear to me exactly how that whole works. And it has very little to do, I'm quite convinced, with the photos of projects on the website. In fact, probably nothing. The thing I'm a student of architecture marketing, but I think the thing I keep hearing is, architects in general are trying to impress other architects. And that's our whole mindset is around that, and other architects aren't hiring us, so it's not.
Yes,
that's really where we want to go.
That's a post that I like to write frequently. You're typically marketing to other architects, but the funny thing is that like it's not even intentional. Like you don't even realize that you're doing it until someone's like, until you kind of like see it or read it somewhere else. You're like, whoa, I guess I didn't realize like all of the marketing that I do. And I think that's really the result of the like autonomy of the industry in a sense, right? Because it's like we're only friends with other architects, right? Everything that we do is like surrounded by architecture. And so naturally, when we think about messaging or positioning or these different things or who we're talking to or the things that we're writing about, it's like it just comes out in a way that only reflects the community of people that we surround ourselves with. So it's a really easy habit to fall into.
I totally agree. And I think a lot of the time, at least I spend a lot of time thinking about, what can I put up here that would be interesting to me? And that, of course, that's fine, but that's not, that's not almost by definition, right? Our clients don't know very much about architecture. They're coming to us. They may not even be that, I'll take a step further. I'm going to say many of them are not even interested in architecture or care about it. What they care about is solving their problem or giving them the home they want. And whatever process that takes is a means to an end, not a means in and of itself. And of course, we're immersed in this, so we're just fascinated by the process. We're in love with our own process, and expectation that everyone else will be, I think, is probably naive and counterproductive.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it's like the clients come to you, or at least your audience, right? They're at point A, they want to get to point B, and you are the vehicle that gets them there. But that's what you are. You're a vehicle, just like any other service business. It's just that architects are just, I would argue, like far more educated than most other service businesses, right? And have a lot of expertise to add to that process. So there tends to be that. I think that's where the large disconnect typically happens. But yeah, you're absolutely the vehicle that gets from point A to B. And the more that you embrace that idea, that your client has a specific, issue and problem, and you want to show them how you can get, and you want to be the solution, but you want to show them how you can get them there and how you've done it before, the easier it's going to be to attract the right people and to ultimately turn them into more clients.
Yeah. And I mean, something a kind of concept I kind of impose upon myself sometimes, which may sound cringe-inducing, is imagine being a dentist, right? Like, someone comes to the dentist either to keep their teeth healthy or to fix a problem with their teeth. And I've had some really interesting discussions with my dentist while I'm there about like the processes that they use to check teeth or fix teeth or whatever. But my interest is not that deep in that, right? I mean, it's like, it's a way to pass time while I'm there, but I don't spend my days thinking about dentistry at all, right? Like, when I'm doing that, I'm there for a specific purpose, and that's what I'm interested in. My experience there, and how do I take care of my teeth better or whatever. And I know that, that sounds a little, well, it is unromantic, but again, I use that with myself because I think architects can be very romantic, and sometimes you need to be a little bit more clear-eyed about
practical.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think about it like a bookkeeper, actually, in a sense, because we're business owners here, right? So you own a business, you have something that you don't enjoy doing, or you don't even know exactly how to do it. Your ultimate goal is to grow your business, right? And to monitor it and to make it healthy and organized. One of the ways to do that is you need the vehicle, you need the bookkeeper and bookkeeping to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to learn how to do it. I have zero interest in learning how to do it. I am handing that off to someone else so that they can do it for me, right? And it's almost the same way. It's like people, they want the home at the end, and they might be interested in what the nature of that home is, just like we're interested in what the nature of like our business is in the future. But in terms of how to make that happen, the actual mechanics of it, don't care at all. Just like do it.
And it does vary. I mean, there are clients who are interested in architecture to varying degrees, but probably never as much as you are, or they would have been an architect themselves. I mean, I'd say, the other ironic side of this is all of these television shows and podcasts and websites and everything else. People feel more and more empowered around designing their homes. So there is that. There's that duality that sometimes causes tension. Sometimes it's helpful, but it's not like going to the dentist or the doctor. Well, I guess people will self-prescribe themselves or try to prescribe themselves medication based on ads on TV too or something. But
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's definitely the danger. I mean, we're in the information age, right? So it's the danger of the information age. It's like before we go to the doctor, we're Googling to try to diagnose what our problem is, right? And we go, well, Google kind of told me this, is that, and it's almost the same thing when people come in and they're like, on HGTV, I saw this, and I'm like, oh gosh, that's a scary start to a sentence at any point.
And pretty much the kiss of death for me in every project. I think every project I've ever had where a client started giving me drawings, I knew it was over. Always like, pencil thick walls and this and that. Or so I think one was even done in
right, single layered walls.
Yeah,
right?
and someone did one in Excel once, like actually drew something in Excel, like in a spreadsheet, used that. I mean, it's hats off for
kind of brilliant, actually. Yeah.
But once it gets to that point, I'm pretty much always sure that it's doomed at that point.
Yeah. It's definitely harder when they want to be that involved in the process, for sure. Tell me about what you're trying to achieve with this plan. It's like redoing the discovery process at that point. Yeah, I'm curious. How long have you been in practice now?
About 20 years.
Okay, as a sole practitioner too? That's awesome. Okay, cool. And so over that time period, how have you seen the way that clients come to you shift over time, or has it shifted at all?
Yeah, I have seen it shift. I mean, I've seen it shift. I'm Generation X, right? So we're like the rounding error of popular. We're in between baby boomers and millennials, and like, we're basically always the forgotten generation. And if I'm sounding bitter, that's characteristic of my generation as well. But anyway, the age of clientele has shifted. I mean, I've had some clients in my own generation, but earlier in my career, it was baby boomers, and now and more it's millennials. So I've seen that change. There's a lot more. And none of this is shocking, but a lot more computer literacy and like people coming to me through web searches and having done and having read about stuff or read through things that I've done or listened to podcasts that I'm on, for example. And there's more and more of that and less of like, I don't know where people would, it was much more word of mouth, less word of mouth than it used to be.
Sure. Okay, got it. So it went from being like less, almost like relational, right? And it's a little bit. It's
more. I think it's more informational and less relational than it used to be. And again, not entirely, but the number of people coming to me that have found me through web searches or internet searches is, much, much higher than it used to be, because it used to be, when I started, it was nothing.
Yeah. And I know we've chatted, before, and you had mentioned you had actually you've kind of put in the work in a sense to do that, right? You have a blog that you've been kind of just periodically adding to over time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so that performs like relatively well for local searches or things like that when people are searching for high performance homes in your area and in different ways. Or...
Yeah. And I think I'm going to dig into your growth hacks on all this, but I basically, when I do a social media post, I also make that a blog post. So it just kind of gets repurposed. Why not?
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know how long your posts are, but you'll have to dive into the content marketing strategy, which is one of the growth hacks. But I actually recommend it like the opposite way, in the sense that you do like a longer form piece of content first. So that would be something like, hey, this podcast, or it'd be something like a blog post, like a longer blog post. And then you take that long piece of content and you break it down into like a series of much smaller chunks, right? You take like parts of that, and then you can, like, rather than taking one LinkedIn post and generating one blog post, you can take one blog post and generate 5-10 LinkedIn posts out of it.
Yes.
Like that.
No, that's a good way too, but that wouldn't require me doing that. It's been on my mind, but yeah, again, I'm usually going the other way. So it's like I've created this social media post. I'll put it on my blog rather than like creating this long form content and then chunking it up into different aspects. But yeah, I think that's a really solid approach.
Yeah, it just helps you get more because volume is kind of a large play on social media, right? In terms of just making sure that you're out there and that you're present often enough, right? You want like a little bit of consistency, and you don't need much. Like if we're talking about LinkedIn, it's maybe at a minimum, if you actually want to use LinkedIn as a channel to potentially attract and bring in your audience, you're just looking at maybe 3 posts a week. Right. But if you go back through your backlog of all of the posts that you've made over time, I'm sure you could probably pretty easily produce months and months worth of content on just like short posts that are sharing something really valuable and actionable about high performance homes. So that's the good news. You have a great backlog there. Of different things that you can use. But what kind of things have you tried in the past so far, or have you tried things in the past to increase the amount of leads that you're getting?
I mean, through my whole career, when I started, I actually used to do like adult ed classes. So I would teach at the local community college or through the high school. They'd have they have all these classes about like gardening and art and whatever. And then they have some things. And I taught a class. I remember it was called Navigating the Remodeling Maze. And it was just like the whole process of like, how do you begin and how do you approach this and what do you have to think about and all that stuff. And that, I did that. I had a newsletter. I mean, this was a while ago, but I had a digital newsletter that I would email out every month, that was also kind of like blog posted. I speak at conferences and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, so adult ed classes, right? You're talking about a newsletter that
didn't
you used
really
to
help.
So got it. So they never brought in work for you.
Not much.
So
a little bit, but
sure.
Yeah, the effort for reward was very low because the reality was a lot of the people that had the time to go to those things had more time on their hands than money and things like that, right? It wasn't a prime location to find people that were looking for help. It was kind of a DIY slanted group by its nature.
Yeah. So it sounds like the main ways then that you've always gotten clients have either been from like a word of mouth referral, or from people discovering you like on Google.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so breaking down the word of mouth referrals, I'm curious, where do those typically come from? Are those typically from past clients, or those from friends, or those from industry contacts? Like, how are they getting referred to you, or who's referring them to you?
A mixture. I mean, past in order, probably past clients. I mean, some from real estate agents. That's been probably one of the better ones. I thought it was a really useful exercise, but I did a bunch of networking maybe a year or so ago, trying to reach more contractors or builders, and had some success with networking with them. But by and large, they were eager to work with me, but they were waiting for me to bring them projects rather than the other way around. At least that was my experience. There weren't. I've had a few. I mean, I've had some builder referrals and referrals from builders that I worked with before, but that doesn't seem. At least it seemed like the builders are kind of waiting for me to bring them work, or there may be. There are like builders and architects that are really closely connected and maybe refer back and forth. They've had a long and established relationship. And then, friends, some industry. Yeah, I've had some industry referrals. Like, again, I have a bit of a national profile in the industry. And so I've gotten referrals from people that I know, colleagues and so forth, in other parts of the country where they're like, oh, you should, you're in California, you should talk to Graham or whatever. But none of it, I mean, it doesn't ever seem consistent or predictable. And that's the part that's really problematic, because I feel like growing the firm and improving the firm and all that stuff, like it's really a consistent and predictable pipeline of work is a prerequisite for all of that. I mean, otherwise you're just constantly reacting. You can't really be proactive until you have that.
When it comes to running a successful architecture firm, taxes play a huge role in your financial strategy. Even if you've already filed, being proactive this year can significantly lower your future liabilities. And now that I'm working with Gelt, I finally feel like I have a partner I can trust to handle everything from my business to my personal taxes, and I'm excited to collaborate them for this season of Growth Detect. Think of Gelt as the ultimate CPA for firm owners. Their tech platform provides personalized guidance to help maximize deductions, tax credits, and savings. Plus, their in-house team of expert CPAs offers tailored tax strategies designed to minimize risk and grow your wealth. And when I first onboarded with Gelt, they shared strategies that saved me tens of thousands of dollars. So if you're ready for a premium, proactive strategy to optimize your firm's financial health, you have to check out Gelt. Go to joingelt.com and mention Growth Detect so you get 10% off your first year with Gelt.
What's funny about that is that the solution is actually relatively simple.
Good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. You probably already know what it is because there's really only two levers. Because actually the primary thing, I think about this in like different conversion stages that you have. Right. And I always like to think about it as an engine. Like it's kind of the self-sustaining thing where you always want to have leads coming in. You want to be converting them into clients. You want to be converting your clients into advocates that then put more people again back into that engine again. But the primary conversion point where it sounds like you're actually having the most trouble is that conversion point of taking someone from being unaware to being aware that you exist.
Correct.
At all.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's only two levers that you have to pull at that conversion point if you want to ramp that up. The first one is time, right? So are you putting any time right now into that effort of doing it? Now you might be saying, well, I think I am, but I don't know if it's working, right? So there's obviously a component of time that's like, is what you're doing actually productive or efficient? Right. But the other lever that you have to pull is money, right? So that'd be paid ads, that'd be paid Google search, right? If you're already getting people through Google search, like you could put money behind, the key search terms that people are typically finding you through, which is actually relatively easy to find after you set up like Google Analytics. You can see what search terms. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. You can see which search terms people are actually finding you through, and you can put a couple $100 behind that every single month or something and see if that ramps up the amount of outreach that you get. But I'm curious on the time component. Like, do you feel like you're putting time into moving people from being unaware of you to being aware?
Yes. I feel like I'm always doing that. But
yeah.
How successful that is. Well, I don't think it's very successful. Otherwise I wouldn't be talking about this as a big issue to overcome.
Yeah. And the time that you're putting into that, what does that look like now? Because I know before you were talking about, it used to be the adult ed classes and the newsletters.
Again, social media posts, participating in podcasts when I can, events when I can, that sort of thing. Probably mostly social media posts. And, frankly, that feels like you're just throwing pennies down a well.
Yeah. Is that mostly LinkedIn or do you use
LinkedIn
other
mostly and a little bit of Instagram.
Okay, got it. And what are those posts like? What kind of content are you typically sharing in that?
It depends. I mean, I did one recently. I found an article. I read a lot. I found something about this study that said that they did a study. I think it was in Denmark, but they studied people who were concerned about climate change. And they found that they responded in two ways. The people that knew a lot about it felt guilty they weren't doing more, and the people that didn't know that much about it felt guilty they didn't know more. So I took that and I used that as a pretense, and I made a post and I said, concerned about climate change, pursue joy with an exclamation point. And I basically introduced this study and I said, while it's completely understandable to be concerned about this crisis, making decisions out of guilt alone is usually not that productive, because it's, unpleasant choices are hard to keep. That's why, like, diets, right? Diets fail. They're really hard to keep compared to like adopting some approach to better eating that focuses on things that you enjoy or are delighted by, right? And the other thing about it is unpleasant choices aren't likely to influence other people very much. And for us to really address this crisis, there needs to be mass adoption. And so I basically said that, and then I went into a segue and I said, if you're doing a major remodel or building a new home, building a high performance home will, do this, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through all of it right now, but like all these benefits that you'll get that make you happy, and as a byproduct, also help the environment. And, if you'd like to discuss this more, we're happy to talk, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool.
And
So
I put a picture my wife took of our dog, like running through the snow up in Lake Tahoe. So, and that's an example of one.
Yeah. And how often do you do posts like
About
that?
once a week. Once a week I'm aiming for. When you said 3 times a week, that's a stretch at the moment, just time-wise, but maybe.
Yeah, well, I think there's different ways of breaking it down, right? Because the special thing about LinkedIn posts, like if you look at mine, right? So it took me a while to learn this, because now I can, because I'm posting 7 times a day, or not 7 times a day, that'd be wild. 7 times a week. Like I post one post every single day. So it's easy for me to generate a post now. Like I know what it takes. I know how to write it. I know the framework I should use, and these different things. But what's important is you realize like kind of the right length, or the impact that different lengths have on like that post itself, right? So you could think of like a medium length post where you do just enough to hook them in, share a little bit of value, and then like pitch yourself, right? In terms of a possible solution. But usually when you're doing like 3 posts a week, I like to follow like the 80-20 rule, right? So that's like 80% of the time I'm actually just sharing value. I'm not pitching them. I'm not pushing them to do something. I'm not trying to take them to make another action. I'm kind of just like building up the trust that they have in me, right? And then 20% of the time is when I share something. Hey, got an opening, to join the studio. Or I'm looking for 5 more people that want to join the studio. Or, in your case, hey, I'm looking for one client that wants to build a high performing home starting next year. I've got one spot open. Reach out to me if you're interested. And not that that's the entire post. It's just like that's that, like in one of them, like it comes down into it, right? And yeah, and so I think varying, between ones that only focus on giving value, ones that focused on like, pitching or presenting yourself, would be good. But the other part of that is that the content that you're sharing, right, when you're doing those posts that are just about value, there's actually a lot there for you to focus on in terms of who is engaging with the posts that you're doing, right? Because if you're sharing something valuable about high performing homes, right, you're not necessarily pitching yourself, but you're just saying, hey, here's a benefit of it, or here's something that you can do. The people that engage with that, for whatever reason, that's top of mind. They like the content for some reason, right? So it's really easy for you to jump into their profile and see, are they located in North Carolina? Do they fit within my ICP? And then at that point, it's a really easy outreach, like just sending them a message. Hey, thanks so much for engaging with my post. Is this something that's top of mind for you right now? Right, just like starting a conversation. Because the nice thing, right, is that you had mentioned, how many clients do you typically try to get every single year?
Several, I don't know, 3 to 5 really good projects, something like that.
And like you said, you feel really good about, bringing a prospect in, like after they're kind of into your funnel, right? Like you feel comfortable in that process.
Yeah.
And so if you think about, even if you have a really great win rate, which I would say is like, 50% is like an amazing one. If your win rate's higher than 50%, then that means you're not getting enough leads, is what I would say. But like, let's say that your win rate's like 50%, right? So you're just looking for 10 people throughout the entire year, right? That you can start conversations with, and that are actually qualified in the sense that they have They have a site, they have a timeline, they have a budget, right? They have those three things, and they're located in your area. And so I think that becomes really achievable, because that's like, okay, even if you're only doing maybe you're doing 2 posts a week, and one of them's a value post, and one of them's something where you're pitching what your services are, what you can do. So that's 8 posts a month, and maybe you're getting 10 engagements a month, and maybe 5 of those actually fall within your ICP, and you're starting 5 conversations, and a couple of those turn into potential opportunities, right? And they like come into your funnel. So much of this business development game is like, it's like math, right? It's just simple math in terms of there's different conversion points. You want to make sure that you're always feeding into that engine. You're getting that consistency that you're talking about. But typically the consistency does start with you, right? So there needs to be consistency on your end for the channels that you're pursuing. And also there needs to be just enough volume there. Right. And so that's where I think if you don't have enough time, then I look towards the money lever, right? Is there a money lever that I can pull? So the money lever to pull, like I said, you can do the Google ads on your site. On the social media side, you could hire someone, to write posts and create visuals that are related to the blog posts that you've done in the past, right? And you just want them to make, maybe you hire them to do them in bunches, right? Like create and write 20 posts for me, on these different things that I can then schedule out over time. And that wouldn't cost that much money, but it takes care of that part to make sure that you have the volume and the consistency to see if that's a channel worth pursuing, to see if that's something that can actually bring in work for you.
I don't know how to judge the LinkedIn. I have a pretty big LinkedIn network, but I feel like an awful lot of that is colleagues. So they'll cheer on what I post, right? A lot of they're like, oh yeah, really nice or whatever. But it's like that, and $5 or whatever, I can get a cup of coffee, right? And I've had the same experience like with speaking at trade shows and conferences. Like I enjoy that, and I think I do a pretty good job of that. And then and people appreciate what I'm doing, but I'm talking to my own.
You're
industry.
talking to your industry.
Yeah. So it's like what that it's good. It's good for maintaining some kind of stature or status or whatever in the net. I mean, it's not worth nothing, but it's not the same as like getting in front of potential clients directly.
Well, it's the question that we forget to ask ourselves usually until after it happens. It's like, is this actually going to be a fruitful venture for me, or for my business, I should say, right? Because there's 2 components of that. Like, it's okay to do things just because you enjoy it, right? Like, you can do that. You can go to the conference shows. But if you're doing that because you think that it's going to be a good business development opportunity, then you do have to evaluate that, right? Is my target market actually going to be there? Is this going to attract them? Because if you enjoy doing these podcasts or different things, like I would kind of do a search and try to find, hey, what are the 5 or 10 popular podcasts around the San Francisco area, right, that talk about things like this, that talk about climate change or these different things, and then can I pitch myself to be on that show? Hey, I'm an architect that does these different things.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would focus on that target market. Think about who in your area that's doing it. Are there actually? I would imagine probably that in San Francisco for sure, there's got to be like climate advocacy groups or different things, right, that you can participate in and you can volunteer in, right? And you're doing it because you find joy in doing those things, but you're also building relationships with people that share the same passion with you, that can connect you with other people that, like, hey, they don't just want to volunteer their services. They want to also build a home and a lifestyle that reflects, those things they're passionate about.
Solid idea.
The other part of taking people from unaware to aware that I want to fall back on is like the referrals, right? And so finding a way to systematize that. So we talked about consistency and volume, right? Is something you just need a certain amount there to make sure that you're putting enough effort into that, whether that's time or money, so that you're seeing some kind of signal, right? And if you're not seeing a signal, like if you do that thing on the LinkedIn side, right? If you post on LinkedIn for 2 or 3 consecutive months, 3 times a week, and you're not seeing any signal or results from that, then your option would be, okay, LinkedIn's not the channel for me, or the way that I'm using LinkedIn isn't working, right? And so you can either drop off LinkedIn and pursue it something else, or you can look at refining and optimizing the way that you're using it, right? And on the referral side, it's kind of the same way. Like if that's something that's already been fruitful for you in the past, then I would be saying, what's a way that I can pour gasoline on that fire, right? How can I get more out of the things that have already worked for me in the past? And I think there's one part of that that's obviously just like systematizing that idea of making it easy for someone to give you a referral. So one really easy way to do that is just always have kind of a client feedback form, right? At the end of working with someone where you ask them, how did they find you? What did they enjoy most about working with you? Is there a part of the process that you can improve upon? Like, asking for their feedback. And then, at the end of that, do you happen to know anyone else that might enjoy work that I should speak to that might enjoy working with me? Right? Or that you can connect me with. And that last one doesn't necessarily have to be on the client feedback form, right? I mean, you can just do that in person, like when you're handing off, hey, I've really enjoyed working with you. I specifically target, clients like you that have, X, Y, and Z characteristics. Do you have any friends that are thinking about building a home too? Right? That I should speak with. So I would try to make that like insert that, into your system, make it a habit to make sure that you're doing that. But then the other thing is taking the time to make sure that you stay top of mind with your network. And so that can be something that's like, maybe you have some kind of regular system where every month you're taking 10 people, right? That's either, maybe those are past clients, those are building, those are contractors, those are real estate agents, those are friends. And you're just reaching out to them, whether that's giving them a call, right? Whether that's sending them an email, just to say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? And then say, that's awesome. I was also calling to check in. I've got an additional spot. I'm looking for my clients for the year. I only take on a few every single year. Curious if you have anyone in your network that you think would be worth me talking to. Right, just a really soft ask to do that, and I think those things that we're talking, these don't take that much time, right? Especially if you, on the LinkedIn side, it doesn't take that much time to continue doing what you're doing. And if you want to turn it up, you can put some money behind it, get someone to help you generate some more posts. And then here on the referral side, 10, 15 people a month, right? That you are targeting to maintain those relationships, to stay top of mind, and specifically to ask them, right, if there's anyone else that you should be reaching out to. I would expect from each of those, like on the LinkedIn side and on that warm outreach side, to get a couple. Like you're just getting a small handful every single month, and that's really all that you need, right? If we're trying to get 3 to 5,
that would be huge. I mean, that would be huge improvement.
So I think it's just we're just talking about small tweaks because you have the network, and you have the people in place, right? You just need to you need to move them. You need to move them through that system, and you need to put the fuel back into the engine to churn it up again.
Mm-hmm.
And then also for sure try that podcast thing, or the local groups, because there could be something there, because usually just one thing like that with the right target, it doesn't even need to have, they don't even have a large audience, right? Like maybe this podcast only gets a few hundred downloads a month or something like that, but it's your target audience, right? It's people that are thinking about it. So something like that can be valuable for sure. Any questions about any of that?
It all seems pretty straightforward. I mean, it all seems pretty straightforward and logical. I got to figure out how to actually make it happen.
That's right. It's always comes down to the execution. That's where I was saying, at the beginning, business development is nice in the sense that it's actually the solution itself is simple. We can talk about it, the strategy makes sense, but it does at the end of the day come down to, okay, how do I execute? How do I make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you slot that in with everything else you have to do and whatever? But yeah, it's important. Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. The general recommendation is that you're spending 20% of your time, if you're a principal or a business owner or a firm owner, right, that you're spending 20% of your time on business development, which is hard to do, right? That's 8-ish hours a week or something like that, an hour and a half or so a day, if you break it down in those ways. So, but I would imagine that if you gave yourself that challenge, right, can I spend 8 hours a week on business development over the next month? I'd be shocked if you didn't see a positive impact from that, like investment, from trying to find a way to prioritize that.
And I think just speaking from my own psychology, I think the most productive way to do that is not to set an hour quota, but to have a task, like these tasks to do, maybe every day, this must be done, do this once a week, do this once a month kind of thing. 'Cause, I mean, that's kind of how.
Yeah, like recurring like reminders on your calendar.
Right.
Or something
that's
like
basically
that.
what I do is my calendar is just constantly turning over, and it's like, okay, yeah, I got to do this, I got to do that, and that's how it would work for me. If those are just
that's
additional,
a great idea.
If those are just additional tasks, they'll usually get done. I mean, I don't get through everything I need to do every day, every time, but if I don't, I shift it. I'm pretty disciplined about like bothering myself with things I haven't gotten done, as long as they're in there, right? But if it's this kind of abstract idea, it's harder to. It's sort of like, I don't know, I've got like two minds, right? Like I'll sit back and philosophize and think about things and all of that, and then there's like, okay, I got to get this stuff done, and so it's really important to like take these ideas and make them tasks, specific tasks, achievable tasks, scheduled tasks, right? Like, because again, 8 hours a week, it's not that big a deal, especially if you break it down every day or whatever. And it's not the thing I really want to do, obviously, or I'd be doing it. I'd be spending too much time, right? You'd be like, hey, you got to lay off the business development and do some architecture or something, man. You're like, get all these clients.
That'll be the day. That'll be the day.
So, but I mean, so it's not something I want to do, but if it's scheduled in there as a task I need to do, I can get that done.
Yeah. I love that idea though, of using, of like creating time blocks specific, like maybe you have that in your calendar. Hey, every Monday morning between 9 and 10 a.m., I'm writing my post for the week or something like that. And then every, third Wednesday of the month or something like that, I have 2 hours blocked off because I'm making 5 to 10 phone calls to people in my network or sending 5 or 10 emails or something like that. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's a great way to action all those items.
For me, I think that's the only way it's really going to happen and continue happening. It's going to be just like part of the program.
Yeah, that's a huge takeaway. I love that approach, because that also seems so simple, right? It's easy to forget that and all this action, right? Because especially like in my Growth Hacks in the studio, like I'm breaking down these steps and showing you how to approach these different things. But at the end of the day, like making sure that you're also setting time aside to kind of insert that into your own, like literally insert the time to make those things happen into your schedule and into your processes is equally as important. So that's great. So for everyone else has been on season 2. They've been part of the studio for a while, but you're a little bit newer, right? You've been here for a couple of weeks now, but I'd just love to get an understanding of your take of the studio so far and what you say to other people that are thinking about joining it.
It's terrific. There's an amazing amount of information, and your energy and insight are really inspiring. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's going to take me some time to absorb all of it, but it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your feedback so much, and the questions that you've been asking inside of the studio, because like I said to you all like earlier, I'm in the process of trying to, refine it, make it even easier to use and easier to implement these things. And so the questions that you're asking are perfect, because they get me thinking, okay, that's a great point. If he's asking that, if they're asking these questions, then that means that they don't have the easy answer to that. And so I need to fill that gap. And so it's been super helpful. So I really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of annoying is the wrong term, but like hearing you explain these things, right? Like they sound so obvious and so common sense that part of me is frustrated that I can't come to that conclusion myself. But there are reasons that people do what they do and that they're good at what they do. And there's a reason that you're doing what you do because you're good at it.
Well, I mean, even to your point earlier, right? Like, the people don't think about architecture all day. Like I don't think about architecture all day anymore. I'm in sales and I'm in business development all day, I actually spend pretty much all of my energy thinking about these exact things that we're having. Like, that's why I love this podcast and having these conversations, because I'm already thinking about these things all day anyways, right? Thinking about different ways to improve it and helping other businesses, improve their processes and improve their marketing funnels and improve their messaging. And so I'm doing this all day anyways. And so this is just an extension of that. And it's the thing that I'm passionate about, just like, which it took me a while to realize that, but like that around architecture, just like you could do the same conversation that we're having right now. You could have it about high performance homes, I'm sure, at any point in any moment.
Yes, for way too long without much. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's the same thing, but yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
All right, thank you so much for being a growth detective and listening in on this actionable episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can continue to learn exactly how to overcome the business challenges that every architect faces. And if you want a taste of what's inside the studio, then go to growthdetect.com/join to subscribe to the Growth Detect newsletter read by more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. I'll see you in the next episode.